Hey everybody, welcome back to String and Story. My name is HollyAnne and it's my job to guide you to quilt and to live with confidence. Today we're going to tackle something that gives a lot of people a lot of trouble when it comes to that confidence department. Y seams. Dun dun dun. Sound effects required, what can I say? Today I want to show you how to do fearless Y seams, alright? And I promise that you can do this. I know that some of you have shared stories with me about how you got started as a quilter and you began a project that had Y seams and you didn't know you were supposed to be scared until someone told you to be scared. And as a result, you struggled to finish that project, right? And what I want you to realize from that is that before you were scared, you were pretty sure you can do it. So really, this is a problem that's all in our heads, all right? Now, if you're familiar with foundation paper piecing, I want to use those shapes as a little illustration for what we're going to do today with fabric, all right? I have here with me 3 little plastic hexagons. I like to use the plastic shapes when I do English paper piecing. And I'm going to take them, I want to just lay them out the same way I've laid out these hexagon shapes. Now, hexagons are made up of triangles, as you can see in the shapes we're going to piece in just a minute. And triangles are the thing that we most often use Y seams to piece. Now, we do this all the time with foundation paper piecing, right? We'll take our first hexagon and fold it over, and we stitch along the seam, and then we fold it back. Then we take our third hexagon, and we fold it over, and we stitch along the seam, and we fold it back. And this last seam is going to be a Y seam, right? We don't think a thing about that, right? We like fold this sucker up and we sew along that edge and unfold it, and we expect that our foundation paper piecing will lay flat when we're done. Now, the only difference between the hexagons we're sewing here and these bigger hexagons that we're going to sew is that the seam allowances are already folded around when we're doing English paper piecing, so we don't have to think about them. We just sew the edges and all as well, right? But I want to use that little geometric illustration with you to show you how we can use the same visualization working with bigger fabric shapes, just like we do when we're working with little paper pieces, all right? So let's get started. First thing I want you to notice is that I have these 3 shapes all laid out together, and I'm going to be doing this Y right here. And just like if I'm English paper piecing, I'm going to start by folding one shape over on the other and sewing this seam. Now here's the difference, right? When I'm sewing this seam, I still have my seam allowances to think about. You can see here I'm nesting my seams together. When I pieced these, I tried to make it so that during this final piecing process, I would be able to nest those seams. And what that does is it allows me to use these little tails to show myself where that 1/4 inch seam is, all right? I'm gonna put this under my machine, but rather than starting here at the corner, I'm gonna start where that folded over seam allowance ends. So that's a 1/4 inch in from the edge, all right? Drop my needle down. And I'm actually gonna do a little bit of a back stitch right there at the beginning, because I really want these stitches to stay put because we're going to be handling these a lot, just like we do when we're English paper piecing. And I'm going to do the same thing at this end, that I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch from that actual point, right? And bring this over and open it up, right? And you can see I've got this nice seam already pieced together. Now, I'm going to hit this with an iron really quick over here, because I want it to be nice and crisp. And we're actually going to go this way, because I still have my foundation papers on, and it'll get a little bit flatter that way. All right, now this next seam, remember we're doing 3 seams to make this Y. This next one is still easy peasy, right? We're going to sew our 3rd hexagon to this 2nd hexagon. The same motion, I'm just simply going to fold it over flat. I'll nest, don't be tricked by that spin, okay? I'm just spinning it around because I feel more comfortable sewing from the outside towards the inside, right? It's just a little easier for me. And I'm going to nest these together. Now, if your edges, if you're doing triangles or hexagons or anything where you have edges like this, if these seams don't nest for you, drop a pin in that and it'll make it a lot easier, okay? You really want to be able to keep track of where those guys meet up so that you know where your seam allowances are. You can also, if you prefer, choose to take a ruler and mark these seam allowances before you sew, so you know exactly where you want to stop and start. Give yourself a line to sew on. There's lots of tips and tricks you can do to take the fear out of this, all right? Now, Remember, I'm going to do a couple stitches of a back stitch at the beginning, zip along this nice straight edge, and I'm keeping my seams nested so that I have a nice visual. If you can see, there's this little tag right here I'm using as my marker. So when I pull this out, see there's this, the way that the seams nest together, I use that to show myself where to stop, 1/4 of an inch short of that join. I'm spinning it back. And you can see when I unfold, again, everything's nice and flat, but this is the part where it's easy to get nervous, right? Because you're like, yeah, but how do I get that guy together? It's the same motion that we've been using this whole time. I'm simply going to flip it up. Now, it just so happens that with this pattern, you could actually piece this in rows of half blocks as well in order to not have the Y seams. I like the Y seams because I prefer to be able to arrange things in blocks and play with color over on my design wall, right? So I just simply remember that this seam here is going to be a continuation of this straight seam, right? Everything with quilting is geometry. So even if you're not doing these same types of triangles, there's going to be a straight line point which you can imagine continuing right through your seam, right? Keep that in mind and fold this up, and you'll see that everybody nests in there right together. And again, I'm nesting these seams. Now, mine's looking like it's going to lay pretty flat. It's going to line up basically perfect, right? If for some reason you had any kind of wiggling or anything, match these edges and then gently ease with your hand as you sew towards that center seam, okay? Now, one more thing. The temptation is going to be to zoom on across here and close up this gap right away. And you may find as you unfold it that you are going to want that stitched over, but start by doing that 1/4 inch short first so that you can see how everything is going before you go in there and close the gap. Now, I'm going to assume correctly, spoiler, that I'm going to be piecing other stuff over here later, so I'm continuing to start 1/4 of an inch in so that I can add more blocks over on that other side in a minute. Pop that needle up. Let me just trim some threads real quick. We've been collecting them as we've gone along. Let's get these out of the way. All right, you ready? Moment of glory here, right? There you go. So you can see I've got a little bit of a bunch happening, and so I'm simply going to go back in and continue this across to close all that up, right? And it'll tighten it right down. Notice I'm starting actually this time on the side that was already sewn. And I'm not back stitching this time because if for some reason I need to correct it, it'll be a lot easier to pluck back out. So when I open it up, now everything is going to be nice and smooth as soon as I hit it with this iron, okay? Now here as I'm pressing, I'm paying attention to where I did some of this string piecing as part of this pattern, so that I'm piecing away from the bulk. Alright. Because that is a lot of bulk. There's no way to get around that, right? And voila! Beautiful, fearless Y seams.